has been reported today that sexually transmitted infections are on the rise, especially among those in their 40s and 50s, with some admitting that they're too embarrassed or even ashamed to visit a clinic. So why do you think that there's still a stigma attached to our sexual health, Judi?
Do you know what? I think the issue is that there's so much shame associated to having a sexual transmitted disease. I think, unfortunately, society would straight away believe that that person's been over sexual. They've had many encounters, many partners, or unsafe, unprotected sex, when in fact there is quite a lot of women and men who have been exposed to, unfortunately, infections and disease because they're in long-term relationships and their significant partner has cheated and not told them, or, you know, they've been in situations where they feel too scared to say that they want to use protection or push on trying to use protection. So I think there's a lot of stigma around shame and embarrassment. And as well, I've got a friend who is a head head consultant in sexual health in a borough, and one of the other issues as well is sometimes the way the settings of these places are. People feel uncomfortable going in. They feel uncomfortable that people's going to be looking at them. Everyone's going to assume straight away, oh, you must have something. If someone leaves with the bag, then you've got the infection. And I think that is stopping the conversation, and more importantly, it's stopping people going to be tested and having the conversation and feeling supported, because all those other stigmas are related to it.
And in the same way that people used to be ashamed about talking about their mental health, whereas they could go in and say they had a broken leg, they didn't want to go in and say that mentally they were feeling vulnerable. It's really important that we remove the shame of, this is just another part of our health. It just happens to be this aspect of our health. And don't you think, Brenda, that just removing the shame is the first step towards that? It's just a part of our health.
Well, I think, going back to when I was growing up, at school time, like 30-odd years ago, I think there was this, it was almost like a bragging rights kind of thing where somebody say, oh, she's giving me something, or I've got something, you've got something. It was kind of, I don't even know where it came from, but there was this period where there were kids at school saying, yeah, I went with that one and she gave me something. I went with that one and he gave... Like it was... The brag was about what had happened.
Like a badge of honour.
Yeah, and it was absolutely crazy. I had somebody that made that accusation to me once, and it was so... I felt so, as Judi says, embarrassed, but at the same time, I was confused because I was like, I've only had one other partner, and I know that everything was fine there, and we wore protection and everything else. So when that person came back and it was more a thing of they were saying to other people, well, she's done this and she's done, and as Judi says, it makes people automatically think, well, I'm going to stay away from that person because she's done that, or she's this person. And I ran. You didn't have to tell me twice. When that person said, I ran to the clinic and I got myself tested and I was absolutely fine. It gave me great pleasure to go back to that person and say, excuse me, there's something that you're doing, obviously, why you've done it, so you better need to go and check yourself. But it did make me even more cautious when it comes to, it's not just about protection with the coil or with the pill, but with wearing a condom at the same as well as that. You've got to protect yourself.
And obviously this was something years ago that happened with you.
30-odd years ago.
If we're talking about, a big rise in sexually transmitted infections in people in their 40s and 50s, surely that has to be because the marketing is towards younger people to use protection. And also, it's not something that they've necessarily had to think about. If you're coming out of a 25-year marriage or long-term relationship that you haven't had to think about, one, protection for contraception, and never mind sexually transmitted infections, you kind of think, well, it won't happen to you.
I'd be traumatised because even going to get the pill when I was younger, I was in disguise, hiding, and no one would see me. So the thought of having to go be tested for a sexually transmitted disease, I would be absolutely devastated. And especially it would be even harder for us because people know who you are. So I'd be... But also, I've only had 2 partners. So Mark I've been with for over 30 years and Tony I was with for 11 years. So the chances...
And I think it's a... Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Judi.
I was just saying, I think it's a conversation that should be had straight away when people are dating. It's something that they should, you know, get out of the way and be able to, until people start to feel comfortable about speaking about it, it's going to stop people from having that honest conversation with people when they first meet them, especially if they have something long term, and or if you're just worried, like you want to have sex and you want to, you know, commit in the relationship in a different way. If you can't say to your partner, let's both go and have everything checked up before we take this first step into intimacy, then you know, communication is lost already.
Yeah.
Now, one person who says that we shouldn't be ashamed when it comes to our sexual health is Dr. Catherine Millington Sanders. So a really warm welcome to you, Catherine. Now, this is really interesting that we're talking about that it should become just commonplace that people have that conversation about using protection and getting tested for sexually transmitted infections. It's something that younger people, if you like, find commonplace, but people, and especially women in their 40s and 50s, maybe aren't so comfortable having that conversation.
I was listening to Judi just now, and I completely agree. It's just something that is part of our normal health dialogue that we should be able to go, just like we'd say, you have your routine mammogram, you have your routine smear tests and things. This is just another part of being able to talk about sex naturally, being able to have a healthy, happy sex life. And this is being able to have that conversation with a partner, whether they're new or whether you've been with them for a while and you're just about to have sex. It's actually being able to talk about it if you've had a check before, and if you haven't, and if there's time, being able to both of you have that sort of sexual health check before you're actually intimate together. And that's going to be the best way to make sure both of you have no infections there, and then you can enjoy having sex without that worry of being able to think about infections. I think it's important. Condoms are the best way to avoid getting a sexually transmitted infection. And it's really important to remember there's also a risk, even in your 40s and 50s, people still can get pregnant, and we do see people coming in being pregnant.
But Catherine, how would you know if you had a sexually transmitted disease? And if you did think you had one, where would you go? Your GP, would it be, or would you go to a clinic?
Such a great question. You are so much of the time, women don't actually know. It's completely without any symptoms. And that's why it's really important when you're coming in or out of a relationship to actually have a sexually transmitted test to make sure you're not carrying anything. So you can do that really easily now. You can either go to your GP. Some people feel embarrassed because you have a relationship, a long-term relationship, and I understand that, so they may not want to see their GP or practice nurse. Then you'd go to a sexual health clinic. I'd also encourage people nowadays these fantastic kits, so you can actually order kits online and you can get in touch with online checks with your sexual health clinic, and you don't have to even give your own name. You can give an alias name and you can check in. You have to opt in if you want your GP to actually get a copy of your results, or it's basically up to your permission. So it's completely confidential. It can be really easy to order the kits. They arrive online to your own home, and then it's easy to check for these things.
Dr. Catherine Millington Sanders, thank you so much. That's great information for us there. Thank you.